It's that time again to spend some time at Springfield Cemetery. Here's your spooky spot on the Playmates toys. This is the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror Toys R Us exclusive. Welcome to Springfield, USA, home of the Simpsons. Whether freezing your brain with an ice-cold chutney squishy at the Quickie Mart, choking down imitation fruit beverages at Springfield Elementary, or drowning your sorrows at Moe's, you can't help but drink in the radioactive charm that is Springfield alone. Yes, a visit to Springfield brings a glow to the heart that never ever goes away. Now, I got to thinking that maybe for this year's Spooky Spots, I would go back and re-look at the Treehouse of Horror sets that we got from Playmates Toys. All four of them were exclusives to Toys R Us. These aren't my original sets either. I had all four of them, and then at one point, I just think I didn't need them anymore. I ended up selling them, and I instantly had seller's remorse. So over the years, I've kind of gone back and I've re-picked these sets up again. They weren't, at least at the time that I ended up buying them again, they weren't going for too stupid of money, but the prices of them have since skyrocketed. Now, of course, this is going to be the first set, and this set consists of Homer Kong. This is Bart the Fly. Mr. Burns, of course, is Dracula, and Ned Flanders as the devil. It's always the one you least suspect. We're going to go ahead and grab, of course, the tape measure, and then I'll bring in the play set, so I'll show you guys how this all interacts with it, and maybe why not, I'll bring in some other characters for comparisons. We're going to start with first the tallest one. I'm not going to maybe measure all of them, just because, again, like, Ned Flanders and Mr. Burns are somewhat similar in size, so, like, Homer Kong is going to be a figure that stands at about 5.5 inches in height, or about, I would say, 13.5 centimeters tall. Then for Bart the Fly, who's the smallest of this release, he's a figure that's only actually about 3 inches in height, or maybe about 7.5 centimeters tall. And because I couldn't do this the first time we looked at these sets, I'm going to bring in now the Jack-specific Simpsons figure so you can see the differences. Now, you would say maybe that Homer Kong is considerably bigger than Homer, but being, of course, he is part ape and all, maybe the sizing isn't that bad at all. And then, of course, when you bring in Bart and compare him with Bart the Fly, a little bit bigger on the arms, a little bit bigger in the legs, but they're about the same size. Now, the one I'm sure you guys would really want to see involves me having to bring in a figure that was an absolute disaster. You guys already know where this is going. I'm going to bring in the Super 7 Ned Flanders as the devil. I've got him on a display stand. Without that, there's no way the figure would be able to stand on his own. I mean, he's a good-looking figure, don't get me wrong, but he's just a disaster, and he never really stays together. His legs always fall off those ball joints. I'm almost even tempted just to add a little bit of extra thickness to those ball joints just so the legs stay on a little bit better. Oh, wonderful. We're being joined by the paranormal candle. While the candle is there, something else I also did bring in was the diorama background. The background is the thing that's going to give all the interactive voice clips to each one of these characters. If you aren't familiar, though, with the ones that we're getting from Playmates in the past, these are really interesting sets. I'm going to actually move each of the characters out of the way. We'll just move them all out of the way first. I want to show you some assembly that was required for these sets. This isn't the first rodeo, as they say. I've actually opened up this set several times over the years, and I've just kind of put everything together, put them out on display for Halloween, and then usually I just strip them all down and put them back in their boxes. The one thing I will say, though, is when you are putting this putting this set together, batteries are included. Batteries, though, will be removed the moment this thing goes back in the box, because I've already had one set of these leak the batteries. It wasn't this set, it was actually the set of Homer and Kang and Kodos. I opened this up, actually, when I first bought it on eBay. I took off the plate here, and I realized that the batteries had leaked inside. And I already thought right away, I've ruined the set. But what I ended up doing was nothing really to do with this set. I ended up scraping off some of the acidic residue that was left behind from the batteries. I kind of just cleaned everything out. And knock on plastic, that diorama set seems to now work. We're going to be looking at that in an upcoming review. But it does take 3 AA batteries. I've already taken the liberty of adding brand new batteries. On the bottom of this, you've got off, on, and demo. Demo cycles only through some of the phrases. Off, obviously, is off, and then on is the full, audio clip buffet. It gives you everything that you ever really need. Some assembly, though, is required. Is you get the main bottom, so you don't have to really do anything there, short of maybe just adding a few things. You have to take the cardboard backing here, and that slides into these little tracks. There's a track that runs all the way around the back area. This will slide in, and then you've got the background area here. Snowball, you can see, is probably off to the far corner blowing some fire. There's also King Kodos, I don't know if you can see, is actually behind the gate. And there's a neighboring zombie off to the side. Pretty cool. And of course there's the teeth there of Grandpa. The hanging character, of course, from one of the citizens of Springfield we see the opener. That's a really cool background just on its own. But then you add all these things into the foreground. You have to add the tombstone that says "Eat My Dust." These two trees have to also be pegged in. They go on here and they go on here. And then you have to also add as well the Springfield Cemetery gate. And these all plug in. There's actually peg holes on the backs, and like I said, everything basically snaps into place. The other thing that has to be also added as well is while the gremlin, as you can see, is already still perched atop of the tree, he's permanently attached to the tree, so you can't remove him. The thing that you have to remove, or the thing you have to add, is actually the little tiny, there he is right there, the Krusty the Clown doll. Now he actually just attaches. I'm just going to remove this. There's two holes right here. Obviously, as you can already suspect, there's two pegs, and just plugs into there. Funny though enough is that this guy came loose. I don't know if he was just possessed. Maybe the candle had something to do with this. But he ended up actually leaving the packaging, and I found him a little bit later. And maybe one of the reasons why I didn't end up looking at the set last year was because I couldn't find the Krusty the Clown doll. No posability at all here. You can't move the head. You can't move the arms. The thing that's neat though about it is that once you plug it in place, it just plugs in just like that, the Krusty Clown doll actually does have his hand wrapped around the side of the tombstone. So that's pretty cool. So you got your tombstone here that has to be installed, Eat My Dust. These two tombstones are already permanently attached, so you don't have to worry about those. You got Itchy and Scratchy. Other things, of course, you got the cobblestone walkway that leads to the gate. These are your connecting pegs. They're going to plug into any of the characters that come included with the set, or you can also use the other ones from the interactive world of Springfield. And then lastly, there's a speaker compartment right at the back here. This is going to be the thing that's going to project the sound. When you take your characters and for all intents and purposes you plug them onto those pegs, they'll then cycle through the audio specific to that character. Again, some of the play sets only work with certain characters, and when you were initially buying the set, they'll actually tell you, I think usually on the back, what characters interact with those dioramas. Looking at, though, the individual characters, first we have ourselves Bart the Fly. I would have really ideally loved just if it was a regular Bart. We've actually gotten two Barts from the world of Springfield Treehouse of Horror. We got this one, and we also got one from the collector set. As for his articulation, these are very limited, by the way. You're only really going to be able to rotate the head back and forth, rotate the arms. No, very little, I should say, for the waist swivel. And then on the bottom of these are all the connecting chips that will plug into these connecting ports. Even though you really get 4 characters. Sorry, what? Nah, I thought the candle said something. Even though you only get 4 characters, only 3 of them fit onto these pegs. So you kind of have to either leave one of them off, or as you'll see in a second, like they take up a lot of quarters quickly. So what it essentially is there's a chip right in the middle, and then there's prong openings on either side that are going to clip onto. These will be the things that kind of latch onto the bottom of the character to prevent the figure from falling so that you get the most secure attachment. So there's Bart the Fly. Of course, you get yourselves Homer Kong. Homer Kong's nicely painted here as well. I think most of this probably has been cast in this dark gray plastic, and they maybe have gone in, painted the hands, painted the front of his chest. Nice face, though, on the front for Homer Kong. Ooh. Head, of course, rotates back and forth. His arms, very little rotate back and forth. And this guy also does have a little bit of a swivel in his legs. His connecting peg point is right here, and then again, we'll plug in. You'll see what I mean. The thing about Homer Kong is that you have to kind of have his legs angled a certain way. If you have them back like this, he seems to take a fall. You kind of have to bring them up a little bit like this, and he kind of bounces on the front of his feet. Then we have ourselves Mr. Burns as Dracula. Excellent, fresh young victims for my ever-growing army of the undead. Sorry, you forgot to take your finger off the button. Very cool looking figure. He's probably one of my favorites from the Treehouse of Horror, and really, of these, my favorites would be Devil Flanders and, of course, Mr. Burns Dracula. Of course, he's got the little age spots there on the side of his head, right over there, even though they're not painted. The big hair that he has on the back of his head as well. Long cloak. He's got those excellent hands there, of course, nicely painted there on the teeth. Like, the figures are very simple in their design, but they're still effective. Now, Mr. Burns does have still sculpted legs, even though really they could have hid so much of that by just having the cloak over top of it. Had this only just been a flat piece, I don't think I would have been disappointed at all, but there's a little connecting point there. His articulation is that he has a head swivel back and forth. The arms do move back and forth as well. You could have one arm up if you want. You can have both arms together. I generally just usually have the arms together like this. The last one is then Devil Flanders. Now, Flanders is the only one that really comes included with an accessory. He comes with his pitchfork. The pitchfork only attaches to this hand here, while the other hand will basically just be resting against the side of his jacket. He's also got, I suppose, technically another accessory. He does have removable glasses. Careful that these are things that you're not going to be losing, because the glasses really only sit over top of his ears. I guess they could have pegged them in, but then you would ultimately just have holes on the sides of his head, so that probably makes the most sense that they just rest them on their head. Just be careful you don't lose the glasses. Now again, his articulation. Head rotates back and forth. Again, it got some articulation there for the arms. Nothing in the hands, nothing in the waist, nothing really in the legs. I like that they've at least given him the fiery hooves that he has in the episode. Nice looking nice looking Flanders though. So how this all works is that they're going to connect to this section, or this section. It doesn't really matter what character goes where, as whatever character you put that into that peg, or that connecting point, is going to cycle through the audio clips for that specific character. If you don't put anything in it at all these interactive playsets cycle through a default sound. Now, the sound will change depending on what playset you get. The first one happens just to be a crow sound. So if you don't have anything actually on these, and you press, so you got a button right here, here, and over here. If you press that without having a character sitting on top of it, it makes the sound of a crow. And it won't matter if it's over here, and it won't matter if it's over here. There is only, by the way, one volume to it. So if it's too loud or too quiet, there's no really any way to adjust it. So say, for example, we want to take ourselves Bart the Fly. So what you do is you're going to attach this onto the peg here. I keep calling it a peg. It's sort of more like a prong. The moment you attach it in place, obviously it's going to cycle right away through its first audio clip. You'll know when you don't have it attached properly, you'll still get the sound of the crow. Now this button is going to pair with this connect-in peg here, so you're going to keep pressing this. And it's going to cycle through specifically audio clips set aside for Bart the Fly. It doesn't matter whether you have him there or you have them in the middle. Some of these obviously are going to be a little harder to line up here. It won't matter at all, again, which of those three you connect this to. That's Bart the Fly. We take ourselves Homer Kong. Homer is usually the one I end up leaving off just because the moment you peg him in place, he's going to take up the most real estate space. So again, we'll just kind of line him up to the peg. And we'll take Homer off. Then we'll do the same with Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, actually, I had on mine a little bit, I don't know if you can see it, there's a broken piece of plastic on the side. It hasn't affected necessarily his interactive sounds. Again, you just want to line everything up here. And actually, Mr. Burns, you kind of have to worry about, because if you put him in the wrong place, like he'll cover over the button. A lot of times I'll usually put him right in the middle.
You're fired.
And pressing the buttons.
Simpson, eh? Excellent. Not blessed. You're fired. Simpson, eh? Excellent.
And it's not to say either you have to have only one character at a time. If you want to put back in Bart the Fly, line everything up.
Simpson, eh? Excellent.
And sometimes, too, when you plug one in, it will then activate the sound chip for the next character with it. The last one then we'll take is Devil Flanders. Just reach part of my hairy arm, by the way. And then we'll just plug him in.
It's always the one you least suspect.
Now this one, maybe I don't have it all the way on there.
Silence! All right, Simpson. You get your soul back. I hold here a contract between myself and one Homer Simpson, pledging me his soul for a donut. Silence!
So as you can see, like they do cycle through about 4 or 5 audio clips. The only unfortunate thing about that, though, is with only 4 characters and only 3 available spots, there's no place usually that I put Homer Kong. Homer Kong, if anything, I usually just put to the side, because first he just takes up too much space with the size of his feet. Obviously, the moment you put one on, if you put him over here, he's going to overlap the connecting prongs that go with this character. So a lot of times, like I said, I usually put Homer Kong to the side, and then I just display it with Bart Fly, Dracula Burns, and of course Devil Flanders. It's a nice set. It's always a set that, for me, has nostalgic feels to it. If you get those feels from having a collectible out, these are usually the sets that give me those feels. Granted, though, they only go out usually at Halloween. And then after Halloween, when I'm starting to pack everything back up, they go back in the box and they wait their turn until eventually I bring them back out the following year. The only thing I would say, also too as well, I want to mention that in the back there's also Marge flying on her broomstick. But yeah, one thing I would say, though, is with these, first, when you get these, if you happen to buy them over on eBay, I would say don't keep them in boxes, open them up, or at least get access to the battery compartment, because you may be, unfortunately, one of those victims of having leaked batteries inside. If you're able to clean them, though, they seem to still work, and the prongs and the connections still connect. We'll say, though, I would definitely recommend checking the batteries just to ensure. And if you do put these out, like I put these out every year, just remove the batteries before you put them back in the box, just to ensure that they're going to work just as good the following year when you get them out, open and out again. Dropping some facts on this set. If you guys are interested to get a mint in box right now, over on eBay, listings for this specific one here go for around $80 to $100. On average, though, most of the Treehouse interactive sets go for around that price, with the only highest one of the four being the Kang, the Kodos, and the Homer. That usually goes, honestly, closer to around $200. It may have had at one point something to do with the fact that Kang and Kodos weren't characters that really were used a lot or released a lot by companies. Since then, since Super 7 has done larger versions of Kang and Kodos, maybe the set of that one might go down in price. The thing about it, though, is if you are collecting with the idea that these are always going to be kept inside of their boxes, you're probably never going to be bothered by the idea that back then companies, and not just Playmates, companies abroad used pretty cheap batteries when it came to things that were battery powered. So if you're going to keep them in a box, that's one thing. If you have an idea at all to ever open this and have it on display like I do every year, it's always probably best to check those batteries the moment you get it to see if any more damage can be done to it. If it's able, and you're able to clean those, then you might be able to salvage the set. But I would say the moment it goes back in a box, make sure you take those blasted batteries out. Have you guys ever collected the Playmates World of Springfield interactive sets, more specifically the Treehouse of Horror? Let me know also down below in the comments section if you also have fond memories, not just of this set, but of Treehouse of Horror. It's been a few years at least since I've actually sat down for a marathon of Treehouse of Horrors. Maybe again, that might be something I can change this year. If you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid, throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit the subscribe, turn on that bell, and of course come back. Even though we're wrapping up the review right now of set 1 of the Treehouse of Horror, we are going to be looking at the remaining 3 sets in upcoming videos. So making sure you're coming back with ghoulish eyes peeled, as there's always, of course, new content coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.